Heart attacks aren't caused by what you think. It's not just eggs or butter. The real trigger is hiding in your daily diet. A cardiology-backed explanation that might change how you see heart health forever. For decades in the United States, the public was taught a very simple message: cholesterol causes heart attacks. Because eggs contain cholesterol and butter contains saturated fat, both foods were labeled as dangerous. Grocery shelves filled up with low-fat and cholesterol-free products, and many Americans started avoiding egg yolks and switching from butter to processed margarine. The belief was straightforward. If you eat cholesterol, your blood cholesterol will rise, your arteries will clog, and you'll eventually suffer a heart attack. But the science turned out to be more complex than that. First, it's important to understand the difference between dietary cholesterol, the cholesterol you eat, and blood cholesterol, the cholesterol circulating in your bloodstream. Your body tightly regulates blood cholesterol levels. In fact, your liver produces about 70–80% of the cholesterol in your body. When you eat more cholesterol, your liver usually compensates by producing less. For most healthy individuals, this feedback system works efficiently. That means eating eggs does not automatically cause a dangerous spike in blood cholesterol. Large research reviews over the past decade have shown that for the majority of people, moderate egg consumption does not significantly increase heart disease risk. Eggs are also nutrient-dense. They contain high-quality protein, choline, important for brain function, vitamin B12, and other essential nutrients. When viewed in isolation, eggs are not the cardiovascular villain they were once made out to be. Butter is more complicated because it contains saturated fat. Saturated fat can raise LDL cholesterol, often labeled bad cholesterol in some people. However, LDL alone doesn't tell the full story. Heart disease risk depends on multiple factors, including inflammation, insulin resistance, triglyceride levels, HDL, good cholesterol, genetics, and overall metabolic health. Simply blaming butter without considering the total diet and lifestyle can be misleading. Another major shift in understanding came when researchers began focusing more on metabolic health rather than single nutrients. During the low-fat era, many Americans replaced fat with refined carbohydrates and sugar. Ironically, this dietary shift contributed to rising rates of obesity, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes, all of which are strong risk factors for heart disease. In other words, the reduction of eggs and butter did not stop heart disease from being the leading cause of death in the US. This doesn't mean eggs and butter are superfoods that can be eaten without limits. Portion size and overall diet quality still matter. If someone eats buttered biscuits, processed bacon, sugary drinks, and refined carbs daily, heart disease risk will increase, but not because of eggs alone. Context is everything. The modern perspective is more balanced. For most healthy people, moderate egg consumption and small amounts of butter within a whole food diet are unlikely to be the primary drivers of heart attacks. The bigger concerns are ultra-processed foods, chronic inflammation, excess sugar intake, sedentary lifestyle, and poor metabolic health. So the real takeaway is this: it's not as simple as eggs and butter cause heart attacks. Your body is more sophisticated than that, and heart disease is influenced by a combination of diet, lifestyle, and metabolic factors, not just what's on your breakfast plate. Or many years, the public conversation around heart disease focused heavily on cholesterol, eggs, and saturated fat. However, modern research is increasingly pointing toward a different and more powerful driver of cardiovascular problems: ultra-processed foods. In the United States, these foods make up a significant portion of the average diet, and their impact on long-term health is far more concerning than a single natural food like eggs or butter. Ultra-processed foods typically include refined sugar, white flour products, industrial seed oils used in fast food, and heavily packaged snack items. These products are engineered for taste, convenience, and long shelf life, not for metabolic health. Unlike whole foods, they are stripped of fiber, micronutrients, and natural structure, which changes how the body processes them. Refined sugar is one of the biggest contributors to metabolic dysfunction. When you consume high amounts of sugar, especially in sodas, desserts, and sweetened beverages, your blood sugar spikes rapidly. This forces your body to release insulin to bring blood sugar back down. Over time, repeated spikes can lead to insulin resistance, a condition where your cells stop responding effectively to insulin. Insulin resistance is strongly associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. White flour products such as white bread, pastries, and many breakfast cereals act similarly to sugar in the body. Because they lack fiber, they digest quickly and cause rapid blood sugar spikes. This constant cycle of spike and crash increases inflammation and stresses the cardiovascular system over time. Another concern is the widespread use of refined seed oils in deep-fried and fast foods. These oils are often exposed to high heat repeatedly, which can lead to oxidation. Oxidized compounds may promote inflammation inside blood vessels. Chronic inflammation damages the inner lining of arteries, making them more vulnerable to plaque buildup. When plaque accumulates and becomes unstable, it can rupture and trigger a heart attack. Packaged snack foods combine multiple harmful elements: refined carbs, added sugars, unhealthy fats, artificial additives, and excess sodium. Together, these ingredients create a metabolic environment that promotes weight gain, elevated triglycerides, high blood pressure, and systemic inflammation. Unlike natural foods, these products are easy to overconsume because they are designed to be hyperpalatable and addictive. The key issue linking all these ultra-processed foods is chronic inflammation. Heart disease is now widely understood to be an inflammatory condition as much as a cholesterol condition. When inflammation persists over years, it weakens blood vessels, disrupts normal cholesterol handling, and accelerates plaque formation. This does not mean that one cookie or one fast food meal will cause a heart attack. The problem is consistent, long-term consumption. In the US, many individuals consume ultra-processed foods daily, sometimes multiple times per day. Over time, this dietary pattern becomes a major driver of metabolic damage. The modern heart health message is shifting from avoid cholesterol to reduce ultra-processed foods. Focusing on whole foods, vegetables, fruits, lean proteins, nuts, seeds, and minimally processed fats supports better metabolic function and reduces inflammation. Ultimately, the real villain behind rising heart disease rates is not a single natural food, but a dietary pattern dominated by ultra-processed products. Insulin resistance is the hidden trigger. 500-word explanation for US audience. When discussing heart disease in America, cholesterol has traditionally received most of the blame. However, growing scientific evidence suggests that insulin resistance may be one of the most important hidden drivers of cardiovascular disease. Understanding this concept helps explain why focusing only on eggs, butter, or dietary cholesterol misses a much bigger issue. Insulin is a hormone produced by the pancreas. Its primary role is to regulate blood sugar levels. Whenever you eat carbohydrates, especially refined carbs or sugar, your blood glucose rises. In response, your body releases insulin to move that glucose from your bloodstream into your cells, where it can be used for energy. The problem begins when this process happens too often. In the typical American diet, sugar and refined carbohydrates are consumed multiple times per day. Breakfast cereals, sweetened coffee drinks, sandwiches, snacks, sodas, desserts. Each of these causes a spike in blood sugar followed by a surge in insulin. Over time, constant insulin spikes can cause your cells to become less responsive to insulin. This condition is known as insulin resistance. When cells resist insulin, the body compensates by producing even more insulin to keep blood sugar under control. This leads to chronically elevated insulin levels. High insulin doesn't just affect blood sugar, it also influences fat storage, inflammation, and blood vessel function. Insulin resistance is strongly linked to weight gain, particularly around the abdomen. Visceral fat, fat stored around organs, is metabolically active and releases inflammatory chemicals into the bloodstream. Chronic low-grade inflammation damages the inner lining of arteries, making them more susceptible to plaque buildup. Over time, this increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. Additionally, insulin resistance disrupts normal lipid metabolism. It tends to raise triglycerides, lower HDL, good cholesterol, and promote smaller, denser LDL particles. These small, dense LDL particles are more likely to penetrate artery walls and contribute to plaque formation compared to larger LDL particles. This is why two people with similar total cholesterol numbers may have very different heart disease risks. Insulin resistance is also the central driver of type 2 diabetes, which dramatically increases cardiovascular risk. In fact, many cardiologists now consider heart disease to be, in part, a metabolic disease rather than simply a cholesterol disease. Another key factor is blood pressure. Insulin resistance can increase sodium retention and stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, both of which contribute to hypertension, another major risk factor for heart attacks. The important takeaway is that heart disease is not caused by one nutrient alone. While saturated fat and cholesterol can play roles depending on individual response, Metabolic dysfunction often has a stronger and more consistent association with cardiovascular events. Reducing excessive sugar intake, limiting refined carbohydrates, maintaining a healthy weight, staying physically active, and improving sleep quality all directly improve insulin sensitivity. In short, insulin resistance acts as a silent accelerator of heart disease. It influences inflammation, cholesterol quality, blood pressure, and fat storage simultaneously. Addressing insulin resistance may therefore be more impactful for long-term heart health than simply avoiding specific foods like eggs or butter. Eggs and butter in context, 500-word explanation for U.S. audience. When it comes to heart health, eggs and butter are often placed in the bad foods category. For decades, Americans were told to avoid egg yolks and limit butter because of cholesterol and saturated fat. However, modern research suggests the story is more nuanced. The real issue is not usually eggs or butter alone, it's the overall dietary pattern they're part of. Let's start with eggs. Eggs are one of the most nutrient-dense foods available. They provide high-quality protein containing all essential amino acids, which are important for muscle maintenance, hormone production, and overall body function. Eggs are also rich in choline, a nutrient critical for brain health, liver function, and cell membrane integrity. In addition, they contain vitamin B12, selenium, and fat-soluble vitamins like A and D. For most healthy individuals, moderate egg consumption does not significantly increase heart disease risk. While eggs do contain dietary cholesterol, the body regulates cholesterol production internally. In many people, eating cholesterol results in the liver producing less of it. This is why dietary cholesterol does not automatically translate into dangerously high blood cholesterol for everyone. Butter is more controversial because it contains saturated fat. Saturated fat can raise LDL cholesterol in some individuals. However, LDL cholesterol alone does not determine cardiovascular risk. Inflammation, triglycerides, HDL levels, insulin resistance, blood pressure, and overall metabolic health all play major roles. Small amounts of butter used in cooking or as part of a balanced diet are not equivalent to a highly processed, high-sugar dietary pattern. The bigger problem appears when eggs and butter are consumed as part of a typical fast food-style breakfast. Bacon, sausage, biscuits made with refined white flour, hash browns fried in industrial oils, and sugary soda or sweetened coffee. This combination introduces excessive calories, refined carbohydrates, processed meats, added sugars, and unhealthy fats, all at once. Refined carbs and sugary drinks spike blood sugar and insulin levels. Processed meats are associated with higher cardiovascular risk in multiple studies. Deep-fried foods cooked in reused oils may contribute to inflammation. When these factors are combined regularly, they create a metabolic environment that promotes insulin resistance, obesity, and arterial damage. In this context, eggs and butter often get blamed simply because they are visible parts of the meal. However, they may not be the primary driver of risk. It's the overall calorie load, the ultra-processed ingredients, and the repeated metabolic stress from high sugar and refined carb intake that create long-term problems. Portion size also matters. Eating 3 eggs cooked in a small amount of butter alongside vegetables and whole foods is very different from consuming a large fast food breakfast with soda. Dietary patterns matter more than single ingredients. The modern understanding of heart health emphasizes balance. Whole foods, fiber-rich vegetables, fruits, lean proteins, healthy fats, regular physical activity, and good sleep habits all work together to reduce risk. Eggs and butter, when consumed in moderation and within a nutrient-dense diet, are unlikely to be the main cause of heart attacks. Ultimately, context matters more than any one food. The bigger picture, lifestyle over fear, 500-word explanation for U.S. audience. When it comes to heart disease, many people focus on one specific food: eggs, butter, red meat, or cholesterol. But modern research consistently shows that heart disease is not caused by a single food. Instead, it is largely driven by overall lifestyle and metabolic health. In other words, what you do every day matters far more than fearing one item on your plate. First, movement plays a critical role in cardiovascular health. The human body was designed to move regularly, yet many Americans spend most of their day sitting at desks, in cars, and in front of screens. Physical inactivity slows metabolism, reduces insulin sensitivity, and contributes to weight gain. Even moderate daily activity, such as brisk walking for 30 minutes, can improve blood pressure, enhance circulation, raise HDL, good cholesterol, and reduce inflammation. Exercise also helps the body manage blood sugar more efficiently, lowering the risk of insulin resistance, which is a major driver of heart disease. Second, reducing processed carbohydrates has a powerful effect on metabolic health. Diets high in refined sugar and white flour cause frequent blood sugar spikes. Over time, these spikes lead to chronically elevated insulin levels and eventually insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is closely linked to obesity, type 2 diabetes, high triglycerides, and increased cardiovascular risk. By shifting toward whole foods, vegetables, fruits, lean proteins, legumes, nuts, and whole grains, blood sugar becomes more stable, inflammation decreases, and heart risk factors improve. It's not about eliminating all carbs, it's about choosing higher quality sources and limiting ultra-processed options. Sleep is another underestimated factor. Consistently getting 7-8 hours of quality sleep supports hormonal balance, appetite regulation, and blood pressure control. Sleep deprivation increases cortisol, the stress hormone, raises blood pressure, and impairs insulin sensitivity. Studies show that people who regularly sleep less than 6 hours per night have a higher risk of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Good sleep hygiene, such as limiting screen time before bed and maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, can significantly improve overall cardiovascular health. Stress management is equally important. Chronic stress activates the body's fight-or-flight response, increasing heart rate and blood pressure. Over time, persistent stress contributes to inflammation and unhealthy coping behaviors such as overeating, smoking, or excessive alcohol consumption. Techniques like mindfulness, deep breathing, social connection, and regular physical activity help lower stress hormones and protect the heart. The key message is this: heart disease risk is influenced by long-term metabolic health, not by one single food choice. Someone who exercises regularly, sleeps well, manages stress, and eats mostly whole foods is likely at lower risk, even if they occasionally eat eggs or butter. On the other hand, someone who is sedentary, chronically stressed, sleep-deprived, and consuming ultra-processed foods daily faces a much higher risk, regardless of avoiding cholesterol. Instead of fearing specific foods, the focus should shift toward building sustainable daily habits. Small, consistent improvements in movement, diet quality, sleep, and stress control create powerful long-term protection for the heart.